everyone. I'm so delighted to welcome you today to this webinar about taking flight and restarting your Our Whole Lives program. My name is Amy Johnson. I'm the UCC Minister for Sexuality, Education, and Justice. This is a series of webinars that we are offering for folks to jump in and hear what's going on, as I'm sure we all are aware of and getting used to the fluidity of our times right now. This one is sponsored by the United Church of Christ or hosted by the United Church of Christ. All of them are joint efforts between the UCC and the Unitarian Universalist Association. We are recording, and there should be some closed captioning happening for those of you for whom that would be helpful. I want to just take a moment again to welcome you here this morning as we're getting started, this noon for those of you that are on the eastern part of the country, and to let you know who else is here with me this morning. So let's start with you, Melanie.
Hello, I'm Dr. Melanie Davis. I am the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association's OWL Program Manager, and I am calling in from Central New Jersey.
Candace?
Hello, y'all. My name is Candace Woods. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the youth program manager at Inside Out Youth Services in Colorado Springs. I'm an OWL facilitator and help to host trainings in Colorado. And I'm also a member in discernment in the United Church of Christ, and it's good to be here with y'all.
Thanks. CB.
Hello, good people. I'm CB Beal. I am a religious professional in private practice, one might say. I'm a OWL facilitator and an OWL trainer. I've been a religious educator for a long time, and I'm so delighted to be back this week.
So again, if you're just joining us, this is the second in a series of webinars that the UUA and the UCC have chosen to host to be able to talk with you about some of the challenges and differences of things that are happening in Our Whole Lives programs and trainings and things like that as we are navigating these challenging times. I'm going to start with a short reading this morning. I appreciate all y'all saying stuff in the chat box. I want to let you know that after the reading, we have some things that we are going to be sharing with you, and then we will have some time for question and answer at the end. And there is on this Zoom format a question and answer box. So just know that, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go along. But our opening reading this morning is from a book called Sacred Moments by Linda Popoff. And this is a reading on courage. And it's by Morris West. It takes so much to be a full human being that there are very few who have the enlightenment or courage to pay full price. One has to abandon altogether the search for security and reach out to the risk of living with both arms. One has to embrace the world like a lover. One has to accept pain as a condition of existence. One has to court doubt and darkness as the cost of knowing. One needs a will stubborn with conflict, but apt always to total acceptance of every consequence of living and dying. So as we gather this morning, we're keenly aware of all of the things that are in the national spotlight, of how we know there are many, many ways that that is affecting each and every person on this call. We know that you are navigating many deep and serious issues right now. And we are here to help you in the way that we can to navigate what you need in your local congregations that's right for your people. Both the United Church of Christ and the Unitarian Universalist Association have polity that that precludes a lot of top-down answers, clear-cut answers for you, but we are heavy and deep on the support to help individual people navigate individual situations. So that is a sort of overarching support message I want to give you today. We are going to jump into some pieces of content and let you know some of the questions that we continue to receive. We have a little bit of new information that will come at the beginning of this. So in case there are people who have already been on the first webinar and are looking for anything new, you all will have that fairly soon. But also know that this is a time that we offer to gather together and to hopefully be supportive of each other. So with that, I will ask CB if they will chat with us a little bit about some of the chief concerns that we keep hearing and talk to us a little bit more about some of those things.
Morning. On the email lists and on Facebook groups and in other places directly, we still are in this place where people need a plan, right? We're the people of the plan, all of us. Part of our polity is that we locally are empowered to, and people expect us to always have a plan. And I really want to encourage people that, Amy, that line was so wonderful, abandon the reach for security. That line in that opening reading, because we are, we who are religious professionals, we who are OWL facilitators, Christian educators, religious educators, our people keep looking to us for our plan, and plans are really complicated. So what I wanted to do just was to invite people, and you may not all be feeling this, but to invite people who are experiencing pressure from your congregation, from your parents, from the kids that you might work with, to really reflect on the other times when you have had to recognize that people's desire for a plan didn't necessarily match our capacity to offer one. That, you know, when we're opening at the beginning of the year and someone wants to suddenly pivot about a curriculum within a week, or someone decides they want a new program, we know how many pieces of scaffolding those things take. And so we get to sort of offer back to our people that this is a really anxious time, and that plans make us feel better in anxiety, and that sort of abandoning the need for security and opening ourselves to the kinds of connectedness and relationality that is possible right now, even when other things aren't. We all have those skills, and I think that this is a moment for us to really embrace those skills and almost double down on recognizing that people's anxiety indicates to us that they need us to hold them. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, CB. Just to really appreciate the depth and breadth of your experience and wisdom, and the way that you can capture really complicated situations and in a reassuring manner. We do have the skills, and we do need support. So, so this is just like a blank permission slip to get all the support you need to make the decisions that are best for your congregation and your people. And to know also that, you know, we're in a time, I was saying earlier to the other panelists, we're in a time now, when we met before, everybody was pretty much closed down, but we're in a time now where there's some reopening, right? But it's not even. I live in a state, I live in Washington State, and the phases are different by county. So I live 3 blocks from another county that has different, you know, restrictions than my county does. So this is so much navigating, and so much lack of a clear-cut ideas of what to do. So we're with you in that. We're with you in that. And we always want to make sure that what we can recommend to you unequivocally is to really follow your local public health recommendations. That is the number one thing that that we want to lift up to you, and to work together, as CB was saying, with your clergy, with your church staff, with your congregations, to be clear about what is most important and why. Because there are social justice considerations in any reopening. And I know that public health officials take this into consideration. And I know that the conversations are real across the United Church of Christ around, well, it might be okay for, 25% of the congregation to come back in some capacity, but what does it mean for those of us who have congregations with folks who are, in very vulnerable positions in terms of the COVID virus? And what does that mean when they are some of the most enthusiastic participants we have in our congregations, and they're the ones that want to come back? And so what is our responsibility in providing an environment and holding a line so that everyone can be safe? So those are all real conversations that are happening all over the place. Melanie, I want to ask you if you'd be willing to tell us some little bit of news that we do have, and also kind of reiterate some of the things that we talked about before, about to help people think through some of the things that would be important to know if and when they are able to gather again for an Our Whole Lives program.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to tie together actually something that you and CB both said, which is that the bit about the health departments, that they don't necessarily look at justice the way we might want to look at justice. And so we need to have sort of a moral compass about addressing the pressures that we feel under, because I think that as soon as the health departments say, yeah, you can gather, that might not be appropriate for our programs. So, I anticipate that Amy and I will be getting a lot of queries about, my state is open, when are the OWL trainings happening, and when are the OWL programs starting up? And just like Amy said, be very mindful about not only who can participate safely, but who can't and who would be excluded. Remember the OWL value of justice and inclusivity. So we really want to be mindful of that. So we have been getting a lot of, I do want to share, for those of you who were not on the previous webinar in May, we have posted the archived webinar on the UUA's OWL page under Facilitator Resources. That page is uua.org/re/OWL/facilitators. CB, if you could type that in, that would be helpful into the chat box. And what you'll find there, some people are having trouble finding that archive, so I want to explain. It depends on what device you look at. If you're looking at, and it's also on the UCC OWL page. On the UUA side, it's in a box on the page, the Facilitator Resource page. It's sort of a pinkish, reddish box, and then there's also a yellow box with some resources. Depending on the device you're using, it will be on the side of the screen or the bottom of your scrolling page, but it will be in the box. It's not in the text. And I will be, shortly, I will be also adding it to our archived teacher webinar page, so you can find it in both places. But it might be helpful if you didn't attend the first one to watch that as well. And then we'll be answering questions and sending out the answers to those questions. So if they fly by during this conversation, you will have answers to the questions. One of the questions that we get a lot is, what do we do about trainers? Because we want to start a program. And I would say that this is not the time to start a brand new program, because we don't know whether the health spikes, things that are open tomorrow may not be open in 3 months. And we might want to take some time to really see what the longevity of the safe period is before we dive back into programming. If you already have people who are trained, Amy and I have created a plan for something that's very temporary, only until the shutdown is lifted, with recommendations from the UCC and the UUA. But let's say that you have facilitators that have already been approved at a training by our certified trainers. For one level, let's say that they've been certified for the 7 to 9 to 10, 12 level. And you anticipate when your program comes back to life, that you will be offering the kindergarten program or the 4 through 6 program. Temporarily, you'll be able to have somebody who's already trained in that kindergarten level to supervise the person who's been trained in the secondary level into working with the younger children. There are some hoops they will have to jump through. For example, you will need to have a supervisor for that pair. So the supervisor, whether it's a Christian educator or program coordinator or a director of religious education or somebody at a private school, that person will need to approve of the person who will be doing the supervising and approve of the person who is being asked to be supervised. They will need to watch all relevant webinars that we have posted and archived related to new additions. And Amy and I will be creating webinars to introduce the most important training aspects of the new level that the person is entering into. So it's not necessarily an easy process, but it is a process that will at least set you up for when it is safe to go back into in-person gatherings. And again, we have no idea when that will be safe to do, but it's what we can offer you now because we don't offer online our whole life trainings at this time. Amy, is there anything that you wanted to add to that? I mean, we don't have any details posted yet because we have to hammer them out and post them. So don't go looking on our websites for that information yet.
Yeah.
Amy?
Yeah, I just, it's a stopgap measure for us to be able to help how we can. So just stay tuned. I was saying earlier, someone said we don't have the details ironed out, and I was saying we don't even have an iron yet. So we're working on it, and just be patient with us. We ask for your grace. Just in terms of the webinar, it's the same webinar on the UCC page and the UUA page, whichever one's easiest for you to access it. And these will, once after today, they will both, this webinar will be on both places as well. Melanie, do you want to talk some more about like if and when you do get to go back, what a first meeting might look like, or some of the things to consider before as you were doing that?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that before you even think about going back into, real-time small group meetings, I would encourage you to use this time, this break, to re-envision the possible. So if your congregation has only ever offered kindergarten through first grade OWL, maybe you could consider, what would it look like if we offered a different level? If you've never offered an adult program, this might be a good time to start building relationships with people in your community who might be interested in co-sponsoring a program. Or if you wanted to offer OWL for older adults, what are the retirement communities that you might want to sort of reach out to? So you can use this hiatus, if you will, productively to re-envision what your Our Whole Lives program might look like later. It also might be a time to re-envision who your OWL team is. And maybe you have never had support. Maybe your church or your congregation has only had you, and you're the only person carrying this portfolio that is Our Whole Lives. And this might be a time to start having congregational, kind of custom creating a committee that will be your OWL team to help you move forward. So, you know, don't think of this as a fallow time. This can be a very fertile time for re-envisioning your program. When you do consider the safety of being together, and you're assured that everybody who is qualified to participate is able to do so safely, including your facilitators and your parents, because you have to have parent orientations. What we're thinking of is that when you jump into a pre-existing program, you just don't jump into content. Like, well, we stopped on workshop 15, so by golly, we're gonna go into workshop 16. What we would recommend is that you really take time to settle in, no matter what age group you're working with. And of course, you'll do it in different ways for kindergartners than you would for older youth or adults. But to take one or perhaps even two gathering sessions to really help people think about where they are now, because the world is a different place than it was before the shutdown, before the national events that are going on in the news and the violence that kids are seeing. So they're going to need some time to process that. So, and then we would recommend that you do some assessment of where they're at. What do they remember? It's been a long time. Do they remember the language, the values? Do they remember the ground rules? You're going to have a new covenant for getting together and reminding people what they're going to be like. So, so it's not a matter of just jumping into the fray where you were. And we talked last time actually about there might be times where you just decide to start your program over because so much information has been not necessarily lost, but would value from being reiterated after a break. So each program is going to be individual. As Amy said before, we're deep on support. We're here to help you. And if you need additional time to think that through and what that might look like in your own setting, then that's what we're here for. Amy or somebody else?
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you so much. So also, one of the things that we wanted to lift up is that in the meantime, while you are not offering an Our Whole Lives program, we know that many people are offering sort of social support groups for youth and those kind of things. So Candace is going to chat with you about that for a few minutes and her contacts and some of the things that she does with youth. I also want to just say that we do have a Q&A option in this webinar format. And so if you have questions that you need to capture before we get to the Q&A time, it would be really helpful if you could put those in the Q&A box rather than in the chat. The chat scrolls really quickly, but the Q&A box allows us to really hone in and look at those questions more specifically. So if you have something that comes up while we're speaking and you want to ask that, if you could put it in the Q&A part, we will get to that in a little bit. And I'm gonna over to you, Candace, to chat about some of those social things and how to gather and what is still okay to do with youth.
Awesome, thank you so much, Amy. So as we mentioned earlier, I'm the youth program manager at a queer youth center in Colorado Springs, and we have moved all of our programs online. And I know that many of you who are working with young people have done similarly. You're holding, Zoom meetings and Google Hangouts, and maybe you have text threads through GroupMe that are being, are ways for young people to connect and to continue building trusted relationships with you and with their peers. And that is so needed and so vital at this time. And I really, I want to continue to encourage you to show up for the young people in your community in those ways. If you are an OWL facilitator working in a congregation, be in communication with your director of religious education or your youth program, your youth manager, whatever that looks like in your context, to see if there are ways that you can be holding space for those young people. I want to remind you, as with everything, be conscientious about your safe sanctuary policies, that if you're having conversations online with young people, that there are two trained adults in that space, and that sometimes you might find it useful to have even more than two trained facilitators in a group. I know that in our context, as we've been having conversations with young people via Zoom, we'll notice like so-and-so is not doing so great today. We can kind of tell something's up. They're naming that they are anxious, that there's stuff going on at home. And so having the capacity to have two facilitators go into a breakout room with that young person to have a conversation about how they're doing and if they need added support, and then referrals out to, proper referrals. So if that's therapy, if that's helping that kid find access to a good therapist, if that's, making sure that they have resources for what they need, being able to do that is really useful, really necessary in this moment. And one of the things that we're noticing in the work that I'm doing is that in this online space, as youth are spending more time at home, we're seeing more disclosures come up about things that might have happened in the past, things that are currently happening now at home, and we've been having to make more mandatory reports. So just be aware of that as you are continuing to run programming in online spaces, that sometimes youth are more, they're able to communicate those things in text, digital space more freely than they might be able to do when they're in person with you. So be aware of that you might be hearing more, and that yes, you have a responsibility to make reports to the required authorities around any sorts of disclosures around sexual assault or abuse or neglect. So be conscious of that. But really, we want to encourage really the trusted relationships, holding that space, letting there be continued space for connection, for the processing of anxiety, for having fun together. There are so many creative, incredible ways that are showing up online in ways to engage youth. So I encourage you to be on the lookout for that. I can link to some things in the chat in a moment, but there are incredible resources for fun games to do online, ways to encourage connection and fun, especially in these summer months where youth are going to be bored. They are stuck at home. They've been stuck at home, and so be holding space for that, and finding new and creative and energizing ways to connect with your young people. So from there, I think I'll throw it back to Amy.
Thanks, Candace. I appreciate it. And we know that many, many, many of you have lots of experience. Melanie, you wanted to share something.
Yeah, to Candace's point about the games, we did get asked, where do we find these games? On the UCC area where you'll find the video from last time, and on the Facilitators resources page that CB linked earlier that has the archived video, there are also documents that you can open, links for parents, for books that can be used at home, for links to find games and activities like Candace was referring to. And Amy, maybe you can talk a little bit about the OWL newsletter, which has more resources. So, you're not on your own, even as far as it goes in terms of entertaining youth and keeping them, not necessarily entertaining them, it's not our job, but engaging them and creating a safe space, and then they may have, you know, the questions that come up and get answered. So Amy, can you talk about the resources in the newsletter for a second?
I will, thank you. So I want to say, I'm seeing in the chat, I just want to reiterate, yes, we are recording, and yes, this will be up on the 2 links that we've shared in the chat so far. Probably the easiest one to remember is www.ucc.org/OWL. It's also on the UUA page under Facilitator resources, but I want to just say that we had curated some resources that are also linked on that page, on the UCC page, about resources you can use while your Our Whole Lives program is on hold. So those are available for you, and it's not exhaustive, and but it's there. I also want to just lift up that. You know, the idea of what to do with youth online is a live question in all the youth leader circles that I'm a part of, which are only a few, but still it's just ongoing. And I know that some online and social media groups are curating resources and sharing with each other. I know there are lots of those. Some of them that I know about are in the UCC realm, but I know that Melanie and CB, I'm sure you know, the Loretta listserv and things like that. Also Progressive Youth Ministry is another one on Facebook that's curating some of those resources. I know that it's a challenge, and it's a different challenge now in June than it was in April, with sort of some fatigue, some Zoom fatigue, that kind of thing. So, so we know that, and so I think that part of what I want to say is, like, it's not you. Like, if it's not going well, it really doesn't necessarily mean that you're not doing a great job. It just means that people are tired of trying to gather online, and sometimes it's just not going to have the same excitement and oomph, and people are going to be tired. So just be aware of that, and there may be other ways that you want to reach out through letters or actual phone calls or other things like that with your groups. We did start an Our Whole Lives newsletter in February, and it was meant to be quarterly. And so far that's what it has been. It went out in February, it went out in April. You can sign up, I put the link in the chat, but you can sign up at ucc.org/OWL_signup. And that has, it's open to anybody. The UCC is hosting it, and we're the ones that are sending it out and curating the list, but it's open to anyone. And it has in it some reflections, and if there's any news that we're sharing with you. It also has a resources section. It has a link to the training calendar, which is, you know, fairly reduced at the moment. And it has a scripture reflection for those who would be interested in that. So that's something that you are welcome to join if you're not already on. And I also welcome ideas for content for that if anybody has that. I'm wondering if any of you fellow panelists have other things that you would like to offer at this moment. Does anybody have anything? I can see them even though you all can't. So seeing no one wanting to jump in at this moment, I will say that there are some questions in our Q&A place. So I'm going to moderate those right now, and if you have others, please feel free to put those questions in the Q&A part, which is at the bottom of your screen. There's a button that says Q&A. One of the questions is, are there any revisions that were underway being worked on during this fallow period? And heck yeah, there are. We are in a constant state of revising Our Whole Lives because of the lifespan nature of it. And because of the bandwidth that we have, we are in a cycle of doing the revisions based on the prevalence of use. So we started with the 7th through 9th grade and then did 4th through 6th. And we are now simultaneously in different stages with the 10th through 12th grade and the K1 material. And we're even starting out the young adult revisions. So, so that is the answer to that. Yes. Yes, we are working on that. Melanie.
So specifically, we have Young Adult is in development. The second edition of the Young Adult is in development with CB is our author. And 1012 has already been field tested. So the process is that the author writes the work in consultation with me and or Amy, depending on who's kind of project managing. Then we prepare it for field test. We field test, then we do something called developmental editing, which is when we look at your feedback from the field test and we incorporate that into the final document that we get to publications. And then it takes another 6 months at least to get all formatted and copy edited and proofread and all that. So where we are in the process, the young adult has just started. So this whole process is just at the beginning. With the second edition of 1012, it's been field tested and I am in the developmental editing process, preparing to send it to publications at the end of the summer or mid-summer, towards the end of the summer. For 7 to 9, what we have done, and this is in production right now, but we've created an addendum that lists, and we did this for adult too, I think, right, Amy? We did this for adult, yes. We created an addendum that has, these are the things that you should update until we are able to do an entire revision. So there are language issues, sort of some universal changes, always mention asexual when you talk about different orientations, always use gender neutral language whenever possible. And, then we have updated video links for 7 to 9 because some of them are no longer online available. So we have new ones for that. So you can be looking out for that. We will let you know when that's available. K1, Amy has been working so hard on K1 and we were ready to field test it and then COVID happened and we can't take an in-person curriculum and field test it online. That wouldn't be fair to the curriculum because we wouldn't actually be testing what you would be using in your own setting eventually. So that field test is on hold right now. So we're dismayed about that, but it's just the way of the world. But please know that these things are in process. Amy and I and our authors are continuing to work on those, even as we're trying to figure out, how to help y'all manage in this challenging time.
Thanks, Melanie. And while you were talking, we have a couple more questions about the revisions and the field testing. And one is, what do the revisions look like this round? What has been revised? Well, that depends on the level. And but generally speaking, especially when we're talking about curricula, the first editions were written back, I'm going to say this, and this is going to sound like a really long time ago, at the turn of the century. And or which is 20 years ago now, and some of our curricula are that old, and so we are definitely looking at language around gender. We're looking at what advances have been made in factual medical information around STIs. We're looking at different family configurations. We're looking at reproductive and contraception technology, all of those kind of things. So we're also really working to make sure that we have critical reader eyes. I think this was mentioned earlier, for racial justice and also ability justice. So those are some things that we are just sort of wide swath kind of things, and the particulars are different depending on the age level. Melanie, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, so when we have the addendums available for distribution, that's not something that requires you to purchase a new book. You'll just get, I think the adult addendum was 4 pages long, single space, lots of notes. So then your facilitators can just mark those changes in the book. But when a revision comes out, like when 10 to 12 comes out, or when K1 comes out, we really, it's not a matter of, oh, just tell me what the changes are and I'll mark them in my book. These are very broad changes throughout the curriculum. New resources, it's not like you can say there's only 2 pages that were changed. It's throughout. So when 7 to 9 was revised, we really, it would be, in our opinion, irresponsible to continue using the first edition when you have the second edition available to you.
Thanks. Another quick question is, how do you get to be a field tester? So when we are getting ready to field test a curriculum, we put information out. We sort of shout it from the mountaintops of all the places we can think of, which is usually that we post it on our websites, we tweet about it, we put it on Our Whole Lives Facebook page. We try to also put it on listservs of where we know that youth and children ministry folks are hanging out. And then we ask people to apply, because there are some guidelines that we need to have in place so that we can do a really good field test and have fidelity. Then once people are accepted, then once the field test is a go, then we send you the material. And that is like right at the exact point that we went with K1, like people were accepted and now no. So we will need to revisit that to make sure that once we are able to do the field testing, to make sure that the people who we accepted are still able to do that. And so at this point, if there were a plan, it would be that we would go with those folks, but it may be that there would be some additional opportunities just depending on circumstances at that time. We're also getting some questions about ages of, like, there's youth that have aged out. I think this is an important one to address. So if you have youth who are in a 7 through 9 class and then you stopped that class, and then you're going to be able to go back in the fall. The question is, like, are we out of whack if we are out of compliance if we still do 7 through 9 with youth who are going to be in 10th grade? And the answer is no. It's always fine, actually, to use a younger level with a slightly older children, but the opposite is what we don't want to do. We don't want you to take like 10th through 12th grade material and use it with 7th through 9th graders, because they are actually written in compliance with the SIECUS guidelines for each developmental age level. SIECUS is the Sexuality Information Education Council of the United States. So we do look at those, and we do look at the National Sex Ed Standards for K through 12 when we're revising stuff for the youth particularly. So know that that is something that we are looking at. But I would definitely say, if you want to finish up or even start over with your 7th through 9th graders, even if there's some 10th graders in there, that would be fine. It would be probably even preferable than to jump right into the 10-12 material. Let's see. I'm looking at, there's a question about team building, connecting activities beyond entertaining and games. And I'm putting you right on the spot, Candace. Are there some things that you might be able to recommend for that?
Team building. Ooh, that's very good. So one of the things that we really encourage is that you allow youth to take ownership of their groups. So allowing them to name what would be helpful and useful to them is going to be really, really important. They know what they like to do. They know what they like to see in the world. And so allowing them and giving them agency in that space to help lead and co-create with you as facilitators. So So there might be things that they want to get involved in and take action in, and we know that youth learn by doing. So there might be things that are tied with the OWL values of justice and inclusivity that they see going on in the world that they would like to take action on as a group. And so encouraging that and helping them to build space for that are ways that that naturally lead into team building and development of their leadership capacities. So that I can't give you like, hey, there's this specific model and you should do this thing and that thing. But really being open to the ideas and the opinions and the passions of your young people, and allowing them to shape and to guide where you go together. So there's just hold space that they are really smart and that they are engaged in the world, and that by allowing them to be creative and engaged, you are helping develop their skills, you are helping them to build connections with each other, and you're helping them to continue building relationships with you where they know that where they know that you trust them. And that's really important, that not just they feel like they can trust you as a facilitator, but that they know that you trust them as well to lead and to guide, and to be creative and to know, like, and have a core sense of value. So being able to hold that space is what I would offer as wisdom in that, to dig in to work together, which helps them to build their skills and to learn, and to grow in teamwork together.
Thanks, Candace. So there's a couple things. There's a question about online training of facilitators, and we're going to give that one to CB.
Thanks. So there's a couple of layers here, and I think it's important to differentiate those two layers. The question of, can there be an online OWL facilitator training, is fairly straightforward. That's a 19-hour training. It is hugely interactive. It requires a lot of observation interaction by the facilitators because the assessment portion is so important. Nobody intentionally signs up to be an OWL facilitator thinking that they wouldn't be good at it or that they weren't ready. And part of our responsibility is to hold space so that people can really figure out, oh, this is more complicated for me personally than I thought. And sort of assess for lots of different skills that are necessary to be an OWL facilitator. That assessment really is not possible online. Much of the work that happens in an OWL facilitator training is conversations in small groups. It's not just information input. And I know many of you have had these experiences, so you know. But it's really in a lot of energy, and amazing learning comes in the interaction of people through really hands-on experiences that can't be just readily replicated. So the question of, could it be partially online? I think that they've answered for the moment by saying we shift the assessment portion of training to a person who's already been assessed and approved to facilitate a level, right? So that person has had an OWL training, and the training content isn't all the same, but the assessment and the expectations of people's capacity is the same. So someone who has been assessed as having the basic competency to be able to be an OWL facilitator can then enter an as of yet unmapped territory where they are sort of, there's a word for it, and I was doing so good with the words till that very minute, but they'll be partnered with someone and have a supervisor so that they're held accountable to the particularities of this new this level that's new to them. So those are the two big pieces. And I think this particular answer was suggesting that there's somebody who is a trained sexuality educator and has all that competence. But that does not answer the question that we have to hold, which is, how does this work for OWL? There's lots of different kinds of sexuality education. So any further conversations might be something really specific to talk with Amy or Melanie about. But in general, I feel like they've really offered us a positive and strong way forward.
Thank you, CB. So there's quite a few questions here. Some of them are about, can we go ahead over the summer and meet with 10 kids in a building with social distancing and masks? And so I know, you know, there's just a lot to consider with that. And I don't know where you are. I don't know what the immunosuppression situation might be with any of your participants or any of their family members. I don't know, and I don't know if you know what their quarantine situation has been in the meantime. So I think that there are just so many layers of things to consider, and I can't tell you. I can't tell you what you should do. I can recommend that you really think about it very, very carefully because of all the risks that are involved, and because when you are getting 10 people together with 2 facilitators, you have an exponential number of contacts that are happening, and someone in that circle, the risk of someone in that circle being in a vulnerable position is just greatly magnified. So it's really, and whether you are in a congregation or an organization, and I think that those are some things to think about, and also some, if there's any liability issue for you, should someone get sick based on that gathering. Melanie?
I think there's also an element of a justice issue here. When people start to gather, people who have immunocompromised systems may not want to disclose their personal health status or the health status of somebody else in their family or their friend circle. So they would have to withdraw from the larger group to protect their own health or someone else's health. So, you know, just really consider not just those people you know about who have issues that they're managing, but the fact that they're very often invisible issues that we are not privy to, and that the larger group doesn't need to have that information either.
All right, I am looking through these Q&As and I'm wondering if there are others who would like to chime in. We're hearing that that it might be helpful to have some adult folks on a call, so thank you for that. Melanie, do you want to talk about that? I will just say, yeah, will you talk about the online?
Sure.
So,
yeah. I would first want to clarify, I don't know what the question about the adult folks meant. Was that meaning people who run adult programs on?
Yeah, there was a question about.
Anybody is welcome to be on these roundtables. So whether you're facilitating a program, whether you're thinking about facilitating a program, or you know somebody, you know, well, you're welcome to share the information about these roundtables. Absolutely, any level. Amy referred to earlier, you know, we do the revisions in terms of most used, that these conversations also reflect the most used curriculum. So that's why the topics tend to focus on the programs under 18. So in terms of the online, Amy and I are in extremely early discussions about whether there is something that we can do online. It would not be OWL online. But we're working with people who know the curriculum and know online learning. And when we have something that we can share with you, we will, but we don't have anything solid yet. I think we've 30 days into this, we are, and Amy and I are, you know, our minds are just kind of like with the scope of things that to rethink. We want to keep our whole lives available to as many people as we can. We want to, if we were to create a new format for online, we would want it to be useful, perhaps to congregations who currently cannot offer our whole lives because of numbers of people or whatever. So there's a lot that goes into it, and we just can't, we don't know whether it's going to work. So there's no promises. So in terms of training for that, we're so far from that, because we don't have a program. So we will let you know when we do, if we do.
Thank you, Melanie. And quickly, for this new signups to the OWL newsletter, are previous issues available for download? Yes, once you get, when you get the newsletter, it's actually a series of links to other pages, and on some of those pages are links to some of the previous information. And then somebody asked, do we have a suggestion for how to do a celebration of finishing an Our Whole Lives program, grades 5 to 6, if we need to do that over Zoom or while social distancing? So many people, if the celebration, I think we said this last time, if the celebration was the last thing that you had to do and then, you know, COVID shut down, by all means, go ahead and celebrate online. Woohoo. And how those, I'm gonna just leave that to there's so many ways that you can do that. And there are things, I will say, things that don't work really well on Zoom are like trying to sing together in real time. That is not a good thing it doesn't go really well. If any of you have been to a birthday party where people have tried to sing happy birthday all together, you may have experienced that. So, but there are lots of ways that you can do a celebration via Zoom. And Melanie has a suggestion for you as well.
Yeah, I would suggest looking at the curriculum, because there are ideas in there for games. Like even in like 7 to 9, there's like, you can play a Jeopardy game. There are facilitators. The facilitator email list continues to be active. And there are people who have created Jeopardy games that are ready to go. And that would be very well suited to an online format for a celebration. And that's something that you could adapt to the content from 5 through 6. So, you know, that some groups do involve the parents, and they quiz the parents. So the young people are quizzing the parents on things to see, you know, hey, I know this, but you don't know that, mom and dad. So look in the curriculum for some ideas. And if there's something that you really want to do, but can't figure out how to take it online, use the email list, the Yahoo group that Amy moderates, or the one that we have for the UCC and UUA folks that I moderate, or we co-moderate, and we'll try to help you brainstorm some of that. And your organizations like Loretta, the Facebook page and whatnot, full of ideas. Put on your regular Christian educator and director of religious education hats. And there's lots of ideas that you know already from other contexts that you can pull over for celebrating our whole lives.
Thanks, Melanie. Also, so somebody's asking about where was the webinar advertised, and they didn't see it in the last newsletter. So I would just want to say, like, things are evolving really quickly, and we had advertised this in places, in lots of places. And if you didn't see it, I'm so glad you found it somewhere and you're still here. When you get a thank you letter for a thank you email, the information about the next webinar will be on it, and it will be July 1st, I believe is the date. Again, at this time, we're trying to keep it consistent and on like the first Wednesday at the same time. We know not everyone can come, and that's why we're recording them. And so, yeah, Melanie's confirming it's July 1st. So it'll be at the same time. The UUA will be hosting that one. So when you get your email thanking you for attending this webinar, you will see the sign up information for the next one. It's our commitment to do that right now as we can move forward. We're discussing August, since a lot of people are gone at some times. for August. So so we're waiting to see when that might be or where that would be hosted. But I do want to just say that we're here. And at the end, you'll see a slide with our emails on it. But mine is johnsona@ucc.org, and Melanie's is mjdavis@uua.org. So if there are specific things that we didn't cover that are heavy on your heart or really weighing on your mind, please do contact us, because we do want to be here and support you through these uncertain times. And also to just really reiterate that this is justice work, and that the work of our whole lives is meant to be about uplifting the worth and dignity of every person. And we are aware that that is something that this world needs now more than ever. So so we thank you so much for all the work that you are doing, for all the pieces that you are holding. Even if you drop some, you can pick them back up. The puzzle may go together in a different way than you originally intended and not look like the picture on the box, but it's still going to be a beautiful creation. So know that, you know, I'm a fairly effusive person, so I will just say that our love is with you, and our prayers are with you, and we stand here with you during this time. So any final words, Melanie, Candace, CB? He's seen shaking heads. So much gratitude to you all. Thank you so much for being here. Please let us know if there are other ideas that you have for us and ways that we can be supportive to you. Blessings to you.